Be smart. Brush off the online noise.
The sober scientist. What an excruciatingly weird concept to me. I am a scientist, and I know how much I have to force myself to not feel but think when it comes to science. Now, don't get me wrong, I know where the image of the sober scientist comes from. It starts with all these seemingly grave men who seem to indulge in their seriousness, deigning once in a while to speak to a mere mortal about issues not related to their important work. In an historical context, this graveness has its reasons too. Think of Ptolemy, for example, and of Isaac Newton. Both did nothing less than explaining the known universe, in the 2nd and 17th century BC respectively. But when asked to describe his work, Newton had this to say: "If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants." And then he became an alchemist. You see, he too was a human with weird thoughts and everything. Alchemists are many things, sober they are not. Which brings me to the actual scientific process as it feels. It may and does differ from person to person and in detail, but there is an underlying sameness to a lot of it. It always starts out with something that stirs one's curiosity. Yes, that may very well be an unusual line in an absorption spectrum or something of that nature. But whatever it is, it appeals to your feelings. It makes you wonder. It makes you curious. It motivates you to start digging and finding out more. Following that comes what is normally referred to as the scientific process. The concocting of a hypothesis, the conducting of experiments, the analysis of whatever data is the result of the experiments. This is a period dominated by the scientist being and staying serious-minded, looking for loopholes in her own and others' thinking. It is just as much about psychology as it is about turning knobs, mixing chemicals, or doing mathematics. But then at the end of all the toil may be the result, the great synthesis. Oh, what a joy it is to finally know that you don't actually know it all. Yes, we may now understand how that unusual line in our spectrum comes about. But now the rest of the lines, the stuff that made sense before, doesn't make sense anymore. And that is really intriguing. Nowadays, the only time you ever hear of sober science is when people who have poor understanding of what science is want to define what science is. And yes, that includes some, though not exactly many, educated people with a science degree as well. Science is really just a method. Doing science, however, is an experience. Scientists are not more sober. Mostly, they are not even more intelligent or something. But there are three things. They are interested. They are human, and most of them know rather explicitly about human shortcomings in order to work around and with these shortcomings, especially their own. And third, some are career people, but by far the most are dreamers. And nothing is more poetic to a real dreamer than nature herself. You know, in January, a couple of years ago, a colleague and I went to Abisko in northern Sweden in order to teach interested tourists, the layman of all laymen, if you will, about aurora. Aurora, if you don't know, is about the sun, the Earth's atmosphere and magnetic fields. Loads of magnetic fields. In fact, nothing happens without magnetic fields. So we had to make magnetic fields fun for people who had paid money to hear inspiring stories about one of the most wondrous phenomena on Earth. We made them take up their mobile phones, install apps that would use the in-phone magnetometers, and look for electric cables underground in the area, which we then claimed to be models for aurora currents in the atmosphere. Yes, that is exactly what we did. The tourists seem to like it too, and that may surprise you until you understand that the sun, the Earth's atmosphere and magnetic fields are all about life on Earth as well. Take away one of them, and we do not exist. When you see aurora, you see life. There's a story there. No, there's poetry there. A kind of poetry that reminds me of what is called Feynman's flower.